Hey YouTube, it's Gypsy. Well, this week we are talking about the Chariot in the Art of Tarot series, and I'm stoked because I love the Chariot card. It's one of those cards that kind of represents balance, the need for balance, the importance of balance. More specifically, finding balance among one's resources. In Rachel Pollack's book, which I talk about in every single series, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, she talks quite a bit about the significance of the Chariot as far as numerology, the symbolism in the card. Y'all, there is tons of symbolism in this card, and I will get into it in just a minute. But I was really amazed at how much is really packed into this card. Now, I know I go into detail on every one of them, but seriously, there's a lot of stuff in these cards. First of all, if you're looking at it from a Kabbalistic point of view, which is a big part of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and symbology, the number 7 has significance as representing victory. Now, I'm going to point out in a couple of these cards, some of them look more victorious than others. That's more of an accent. Definitely see that in a lot of these cards. The main thing that you notice is that it has a procession feel to it. We see him kind of perched up in his chariot, being pulled along by the chariot, by the, what are these things? The sphinxes? But not really, because it's not really in motion, and we'll get into that in a minute. But, you know, it does have that sort of a presiding feel to it, because he is perched in his little chariot. She also talks about how it represents maturity. This is the first and the second line of the major arcana. She kind of splits it up into 3 when she talks about it in this book. And she talks about the fact that the Fool has sort of come to a point in his journey where he has figured some stuff out. He has gone through all of these, you know, the first set of lessons, opened the first doors on his path. We've seen the Magician, we've seen the High Priestess, we've seen the Emperor and the Empress, and we've seen the Hierophant, and we've seen the Lovers. And so in a lot of these cards, and again, I will bring this up whenever I really start digging into the symbolism, but we see evidence of all of these little pieces of his journey in the Chariot card. He has come to a place where he has finally figured some things out. He's mastered his own realm, and he has taken control of the ups and downs in his life, the dark and the light that influence his path. So that is something to keep in mind as we go through these Chariot cards. She also mentions in her book an aspect of victory over mortality, which is an even more specific way to look at this victory. She also points out that typically when you see funeral processions from days gone by, when there was someone significant and important that was being interred, there were horses drawing the hearse that would come along in the carriage and carry the casket to its burial place. I actually went through my cards, and out of all of the cards, half of them actually had horses, not the Sphinx that we see in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So that's something also to keep in mind as we're looking through these. Lots of horses, not a lot of Sphinx. Found that very interesting. Now, some of the more specific items that she mentions in her book as far as being symbols that we would look for in the Chariot, first and foremost, obviously, we have a man sitting in the Chariot. So obviously here we see a man that is, you know, master of his vehicle here. And we also see 2 beasts symbolically pulling this chariot, or in front of the chariot, signifying that they are escorting the chariot forward in some way. Again, it's not always the Sphinxes. I'm always struggling. Is that the correct way to say multiple Sphinxes? Sphinxes, Sphinxi, Sphinx. That just sounds funny with the X and the Sphinxes. With the 2 Sphinxes. Okay, now it's making me laugh because it sounds stupid. Okay, but anyway, there's 2 beasts of some sort pulling this chariot. The chariot is on wheels. The wheels are on water, and you can see that here. If you see the wheels, they are resting on water. I can't reword it any better than she can, so I'm just going to read it out of the book. So this is being directly quoted from 78 Degrees of Wisdom. The wheels of the chariot rest on water, showing that he draws energy from the unconscious, though the chariot itself, resting on land, separates him from a direct contact with that great force. So that's something to watch for, because I see a lot of water in a lot of these cards, and I never really noticed it before. Another thing here to note is that, you know, he looks pretty rigid, which is also reminiscent of the Emperor card. He's standing straight up. He's serious. She even kind of says that, you know, it's almost like he's becoming one with the chariot. If you look there, it's like he's melding into, you know, this concrete-looking chariot, and he's becoming very rigid himself, which is kind of a caution not to become so wrapped up in controlling things that you lose your flexibility. We also see the yoni and the lingam here. I don't know if you can see that very well. Also kind of looking like the, you know, the peg that goes into the hitch. Okay, the lingam and yoni actually represent male and female. I looked up lingam and yoni on Google Images. Okay, don't do it with your kids around, because there are some very graphic yonis out there. So be warned. So anyway, that represents the male and female energies coming together, is what that is. I also noticed the wings. She doesn't really talk about it much in her book, but I keep seeing these wings show up in a lot of cards, so I went ahead and counted that as a point because it was pretty significant. And then we see these magical symbols here in his robe. The chariot actually reflects all of those items, all of those cards that I said earlier. The lovers, the Hierophant, the high priestess, I said Hierophant, the magician, the emperor, the empress. They're all represented in little ways in this chariot card. It's like they've all come together. So here we see the lovers, sort of. And then the rigid, you know, the rigid stance that he takes is reminiscent of the emperor. We have this veil up here, which very obviously represents the high priestess. And then the stars, you know, the empress had this star on her crown, and then there's stars and stuff in the veil. That represents the empress energy. And then we have the wand here from the magician. So that's there. Have I left anybody out? Hierophant. I forgot him. Okay, here we have, if you can see, there are some faces on his shoulder plates here. That represents the Hierophant. The Pope. I know how some of y'all love it when I refer to it as a Pope. I'm just kidding. The spiritual leader, the cultural representative, attaché, if you will, whatever. Another thing that I think is pretty interesting is that also, like the Hierophant card, we have a trinity here. Just like we had the acolytes, we have the Sphinx, the two animals along with the charioteer here. You know, you have that sense of the three. We also have the palaces here in the background, which, you know, I don't. If there was symbolism involved, I missed it, and I didn't see it, and I didn't underline it, but it is present in some of the other cards. So there's that. All right, so I am going to go on with the other cards that we see here, because I actually have 24 cards I'm looking at tonight, including this one. I have included 2 more decks. It is the Vertigo Tarot by Vertigo Comics. The text for that was done by Rachel Pollack. So I decided to go ahead and include it. I also included the Bohemian Gothic Tarot by Bava Studios. So that is included as well. And no, that's not the artist that did the deck, but I don't have that information in front of me. It's in the credits if you're just dying to know. There were 10 points that I gave out. I didn't give points for every single thing I just talked about because that would have taken forever. But the highest scores tied at 5.5 out of 10 points. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Not a lot of people went to the trouble to actually represent all of these things. Go all the way back to 1450 to start with the Visconti Tarot and the Minchiati Tarot. The Visconti Tarot is very simple, as it has been. However, what I think is very interesting for me, personally, is the fact that this is a woman. Y'all, I don't care how you're looking at this card, that is a female. There's a female in a dress. But I do notice that she also holds this globus, whatever I called it before, I don't have it in front of me, that representation of royalty. It's hard to tell here because my screen is reflecting like a mofo But whenever they gilded it and put this gold background on it, it kind of got cut off. This is supposed to have a cross on the top. I looked up an older, like a normal looking Visconti Sforza deck, and this actually is supposed to be a cross on top. It just seems to have gotten cut off whenever they gilded the background with this gold stuff. So that was lost. Obviously here, what do we have? Not Sphinxes. No, those are Pegasuses, y'all. Pegasi. Tonight is not plural night for Gypsy. These are Pegasuses. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. They're horses with wings. So we see the horses. We see the wings. We have wings. Found that pretty cool. She is holding a wand, so we do have a representation there. She looks very royal. That could be interpreting several of the characters that we've seen in this card. The Visconti Sforza deck really likes their globe, and all of these first majors, I believe, except probably the Lovers, actually was holding this. So I'd have to go back and watch all my videos and look at all my cards. I don't have them in front of me, so I'm not gonna. But there you go. And so we don't have quite as much symbolism as we do in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but I don't expect to, because that stuff, the Kabbalah and all that kind of stuff, wasn't really part of it at the time. Minchiati. Now again, this is not number 7. The Minchiati deck, the Chariot, is actually number 10. Little bit of trivia for you there. The Chariot actually comes a little later. So in the Minchiati deck, the Fool has to wait a little bit longer before he earns this Chariot card. But we will, we'll go back and review the 8, 9 later. Again, we have horses. Horsey horses. These don't have wings. These are normal horses. But again, we have a woman. I have to point this out. In a lot of decks, the Chariot card is a man, and the Strength card is a female. It was a woman. So you have the man controlling the Chariot with his knowledge and his, his logic and his skill, and then you have the woman who is controlling the beast with her imposing her will psychically, with her mind, approaching a situation from a different point of view. So I find it pretty, as I've said 100 times, interesting that in the old decks that came before the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it was a chick. It was a chick for these first 2 decks that I have that came 300 years before the Marseille deck. Now, in the Marseille deck, we can see where the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was actually quite influenced by the Marseille representation. We have 2 horses. Now, here they have turned black and white. In these 2 cards, the horses look the same. They're not different. We have 2 brown horses here. We have 2 white horses here. But in this card, we have a black and a white horse. And here they have started to kind of point in opposite directions. In this card, they're kind of looking in different directions, but their bodies are facing the same way. There's also reins. I forgot to mention this earlier. There are reins being held here. However, in the Visconti Sforza deck, there are no reins. She is not holding reins. She is holding her globe, and she is holding her wand. So originally, there were no reins, which is a big part of the symbolism. This Chariot is being controlled by the mind, by the knowledge, by the willpower. However, in a lot of these cards, there are reins. And I think that, for me, the Chariot, it shouldn't have reins. It defeats, that's like a major part of the symbolism, in my opinion, for me. So I kind of, now that I've kind of read about this and looked into it, I get irritated when I see reins in their hand. It's like, come on, you chicken. Let go of the reins. Just control them with your mind. Whatever, chickens. But here we have reins. In the Marseille deck, they have disappeared. There are no reins again. We have the wand still, just like we had in the original deck. And again, like I said, we have the horses here. I do not see water yet, so that hasn't happened. But he is obviously controlling these horses. And the wheels are pointed funny. I mean, it's like, where the hell do you think your Chariot's going to go? Because your wheels are pointing the wrong way. Whatever. I'm not going to nitpick that much. Okay, the Gilded Tarot and oddly enough, the Bohemian Gothic Tarot, these both got a score of 5.5. I gave a half a point for evidence of previous cards whenever we talked about, representing the Hierophant and the Empress and the, High Priestess, all of those cards. Some of these, none of them represented all of them the way the Rider-Waite-Smith deck did. I don't think. It looks like I gave points to Illuminati, so when we get to that one, we'll talk about it. But these two had the highest rating. The Gilded Tarot by Sarah Marchetti. Obviously, again, we have a woman here that is in the Chariot controlling it. She does not have reins, so I do appreciate that. Thank you, Ciro. Thank you, Mr. Marchetti. Down here, we do have the two different colored sphinxes. So we have the representation of dark and light. And I just thought of something. High Priestess, the two columns. What was it? The B and the J? Leave that alone. Anyway, we also have the veil. She has a crown on, but I see this sun over the thing kind of being more representative maybe of the Empress energy. But we have a woman there, so I feel like the Empress is kind of represented through her as well. She's a full-figured woman. She's kind of, lounging comfortably in her chair, just kind of like the Empress did. She's looking off to the side. She's not near as, rigid as the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck in his Emperorness. She reflects more of an Empress version of the Chariot. So that's pretty cool. Also, I do not see water. There is blue down here, but he doesn't actually illustrate water, so I didn't give credit for that. But the Sphinxes did gain some bonus points there. And it's not in motion. And a lot of, in this one, obviously, the Chariot's not really going anywhere. In some of the cards, the Chariot is moving. It looks like it is on its way. So I personally kind of like to see it in motion because it shows that that is actively being controlled. If it's sitting still, well, hell, I can master a Chariot that didn't move in either. Doesn't seem like it's that hard. So for me personally, when I'm looking at it, I kind of like the Chariots that are in motion, even though that's really not the traditional representation. So Gilded Tarot, there you go. Bohemian Gothic Tarot, here you go. It's a very dark deck, so it's going to be hard to see a lot of these pictures in these videos from now on whenever I show these cards. Sorry, it's how the decks were done. If you want to see it like in real life, get the deck. That's all I know what to tell you. We have wings, guys. We have wings. They are back there on this charioteer. These are sphinxes. They are a different kind of sphinx. They kind of remind me of Neverending Story. You remember that part where he has to go through the gateway and he has to say the princess's name or whatever? That's what that makes me think of. Or those sphinxes that open their eyes and zap shit and stuff. That was cool. It's a cool scene. Ooh, I want to go watch that movie now. I love the color red. I love the use of the color red. I'm always, kind of a sucker for the color red, you know what I mean? And we got rains. So that kind of ticks me off. Don't see a lot of representation of other previous cards. I do like the headdress. It's not reminiscent of anything that I'm familiar with. I did not go back and look at the first few cards of this deck for reference, so sorry, I'm not prepared. But I think that this crazy helmet thing that he's got on is pretty cool. It is a man, so we do have a man in control. And these sphinxes have boobies, just like these sphinxes do. See, there's boobs. These sphinxes have boobs. These sphinxes, they're covered up. So if there's boobs, we don't know it. Those are the winners. The next two had a score of 5. Illuminati Tarot and, oddly enough, the Archon Tarot. And the Archon Tarot kind of scores low a lot of the times because they're kind of like to go be a little bit different. Not in this case. I am going to warn you, though, this one's a little bit nudie. The Archon, not the Illuminati. Illuminati Tarot, I was really surprised to see that they went with horses and not with sphinxes. I know it's really hard to see this in the video. These Illuminati cards are so intense that it is really hard for me to show them to you adequately. I mean, this just does not do it justice. Those of you who know about this Illuminati Tarot, y'all know what I'm saying. Look at your own. But we have the castles in the background. We have the veil, and it has the stars and the moon. So we have the representation of the Empress and the High Priestess. He's got his wand here that he's holding, so we have the Magician represented. Again, he's very rigid. He looks very similar, actually. He is wearing armor, if you look closely, so he does actually look very similar to the Emperor. that we see in the Illuminati tarot. I do not see a representation of the lingam and the yoni, and his armor is not quite what I would expect to represent the Hierophant. So, it's kind of partial credit there for that. The horses are running through water, however. So we do see here that the chariot is going through water. It is having that crossover representing the access to the unconscious. So they got credit for that. Pretty similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith, but not as much as some of the other cards in this deck have been. But yes, I do like, personally, I like the horses better than the Sphinxes. That's just me. Here's the Archon Tarot. There's the Naked Lady. We got another chick in charge of the chariot. Not fighting it, digging it. More the merrier. Never going to be upset when I see a woman in charge of stuff. We have a black horse and a red horse. This is a very simplified version. However, we do very clearly have an example of the yoni and lingam there. Right there, right here. We see, it's hard to see in this lighting because it's so crappy, but we have the rod here, and then we have the yoni here. Yes, very much so represented by the female and the male energy there. The lovers is represented. Not so much any of the other of the major arcana that we have crossed paths with, however. But again, that's okay. I don't see reins. It looks like she's just kind of putting her hands on them, kind of like we see in the strength card in a lot of decks. That's okay with me too. I like this chariot card. Doesn't have quite as much symbolism as I like, generally speaking, but I like that card. It's good. The next two also tied. We have the Paulina Tarot and the Hobbit. So, and I know, right? The Hobbit's kind of high up this time. It's usually kind of low. The Paulina Tarot is, I love this deck, but I gotta say, I'm not sure this is my favorite chariot card. This one looks like this one doesn't look as in control as some of the other chariot cards. The charioteer that is actually in the chariot, which I can't really tell if it's a male or female, and that happens a lot with Paulina Cassidy's cards, and that's okay. I can go, either way. I'm used to the males. I like the females. But in this one, he's sitting all chill. I'm going to say he for argumentative purposes. He's sitting all chill. The expression on the face is one of, serenity. That's cool. I get it. I get the feeling that he feels he's in control. But when I look at the card as a whole, looks like it's tumbling right out of the sky in chaos. And it's kind of like, psst, hey, you're falling out of the sky. Did you know that? I don't get quite as strong a feeling of control in this one as I do in some of the other ones. Maturity, yes, just because of the expression and the chillness, the posture, I can see that, but I don't know. Again, we have Pegasus, just like we did way back in 1450. I do like seeing Pegasus, That's awesome. We have two different horses of different colors. That's cool too. We have stars all over the place. So here we have, the veil isn't behind the charioteer. It's actually kind of like this skirty thing that's flowing off. So we have the high priestess and the empress represented here. But I don't see really where everybody else is being represented so much. So I did not give credit for representing, the other cards. I do think that there is value in showing that veil because you have that sense of crossing over and knowing what's on the other side now and being able to understand it and know how to use that knowledge. So that's cool. I'm glad that that's represented, but I don't think it's enough to get a point. The Hobbit Tarot. We have several horses and they're all pointing in different directions. We've got this shadowy figure back here in the background that seems to be the only one that actually knows what's going on because they're the only one whose horse is actually moving. So that's kind of I take that as that being the leader. No, I've not read the guidebook. I don't know who that is supposed to be. All I know is I see Gandalf here, it looks like. No, I'm totally wrong. These are dwarves. These are dwarves, it looks like, maybe. And obviously that is Bilbo there. This, I am not sure who this is. let's go with Gandalf. Let's say that might be who it is. I don't know. Haven't read the guidebook. Not going into it. Very different looking thing here. We don't have water. We don't have wheels. We don't even have a damn chariot. I'm not even really sure why that got so many points. What am I looking at? Males. It has males. I gave half a credit for having 2 beasts, because really there's more than 2, but they're all pointing in different directions, which is another thing that got them a point. And they're not in motion. You know, that's a stretch. I don't know, that really should have scored so high. Whatever, it's a flawed system. I'm making it up as I go. So here we have the Joie de Vivre. Now, I like the Joie de Vivre. I like Paulina Cassidy's representation in this deck better than I do in the other deck. This one has more of a sense of control. I like the whimsy in it, and I like the fact that she did seahorses. So you have horses and water represented in the same symbol, in the same creature. So it does have that watery, you know, unconscious sense to it, but it's kind of sneaky the way she did that. I like that. And again, we don't have a blatant representation of all of the other cards, and it's hard to see. I am thinking that this Yoni and Lingam representation is seen right here in this little necklace. Can you see? Can you see that? It almost looks kind of like a cat-looking symbol. It's a circle, and it has like a little line, like a little bar kind of in the middle of it. I personally kind of think that that could be representative of that male and female energy coming together, but I will leave that to you that use the Joie de Vivre deck if you want to acknowledge that or not. I like the Chariot. It's a cool shell. This is a really unique way to represent the Chariot, one of the more unique representations. So this is probably, I don't know if I'm ready to say it's my favorite, because I forgot to kind of go through and pick one. Ooh, I like this card a lot, though. I'm going to call it up there towards the top. If it's not my favorite, it's in the top 2 or 3. The other one is the Legacy of the Divine Tarot, also by Ciro Marchetti. Now, this one is very awesome. God, I don't know, man. I like this one a lot, too. We see a lot going on here. Again, we have horses. The horses are tromping through water. Okay, screw the stream. This is straight up riding through water. They are tromping through it, splashing it around. The horses are reined. They do have reins. In fact, she's got them by little chain reins. So she ain't even playing. We have wings. We have an awesome staff. This is not just some little wand. We've got this killer staff that is actually shooting out some powerful stuff right here. And then if you look very closely on the front of this, you see I guess that's like a Gemini sign. It's the 69, which also can be taken to represent the same thing as the Lingam and Yoni. That's what I'm trying to say. And again, we have a woman. She is leading the Chariot. Loving it. Okay, the next one, we had a 4-way tie between Deviant Moon, the Tarot of Dreams, Minchiati, which I already went over, and Shadowscapes Tarot. So that's these 3 right here. Deviant Moon is the first of those, and this is a really different card than what we normally see. There is no beast. There is nothing pulling the Chariot. This guy is nothing but a big fat head on wheels. The mind is all there is to control this vehicle. I get this card, and I really do like it, even though it is completely different from a lot of the Chariot cards. This is different. You know, like the Joie de Vivre Tarot, she takes a different approach to representing the horses and things like that, and I kind of like the tricky way she did that. But this one is cool because Patrick Valenza just went a whole different direction with the way that he represented the Chariot, and I think this is a great example of, you know, really getting out there and doing something different. You still get the sense that he is in control, because, I mean, he has nothing. He has no steering wheel. He has no reins. There's nothing pulling it, you know, and yet he seems to, you know, have this fierce look in his eye, like he's going to get to where he needs to go, and I am not going to question it. Very cool representation of the Chariot, in my opinion. Here is the Tarot of Dreams, and this is the last one I have by Ciro Marchetti. And again, blatant waterness. This is all up in the unconscious. Almost a little more than necessary, personally speaking, but it's cool. We got this sexy rider. It is a male. And he's got his reins, because he's a chicken shit, and he can't do it without the reins. Yes, you can! Of course, you know, the waves are pretty strong, so maybe his horses need a little extra guidance. They're pointing in the same direction, they are the same color, so we don't have quite as much of diversity. It's a beautiful picture, don't get me wrong, it's a gorgeous image. Not really my favorite Chariot card. I think that he's missing some stuff in here that I would personally kind of like to see. So, you know, it's beautiful artwork. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's bad art, because it's not. I'd be lying to you, but not really what I'm looking for in a Chariot card. Then we have the Shadowscapes Tarot, and as usual, I absolutely love it. There's a crab down here. I know that it has symbolism and all that stuff. I try to stay away from the individualized symbolism for the cards, but there's a crab in another card, and I noticed it earlier, and I thought that was kind of interesting, but I'll point it out when I get to it if I can remember. No reins. It looks to me like that's a woman. She is not holding reins for her beautiful unicorns. They are, again, thrashing through the water, but in this instance, it doesn't bother me as bad. We have the palace in the background, just like we have with this one. I mean, these two cards are kind of similar when you look at the elements. You know, the horses are not two different colors. They're the same color, just like they are in the Tarot of Dreams. They are, they seem to be a little bit more chaotic, maybe because they don't have reins, they don't have bits in their mouths. They have a little bit more of a sense of freedom, yet they also are showing control because their bodies are pointing in the same direction, which is reminiscent of the Minchiati tarot that I showed you at the very beginning, that I'm not going to dig out again now. Rewind. Again, I love the use of red here. I love the red ribbons. She's very subtle with how she uses red in some of her cards. It's hard to see in this image, but she has some red ribbons flowing here from her headdress, and then of course she has the red ribbons that are around her ponies, her unicorns here. And then we have the sea turtles at the bottom. It's a beautiful card. It flows really nicely, and you know, she doesn't use just a ton of colors, but where she does put color, it really counts. So, good job with that one as usual. Low down tonight is the Tarot of the Magical Forest, which I thought I'd lost, and I recovered, so I was able to show it to you tonight. Here we have two beautiful little water buffaloes being led by a hedgehog. You're never going to see that anywhere else, folks. Of course he's using reins, because they're water buffaloes, and he's a hedgehog. Come on, there's just not that level of trust that would warrant him being able to let go of those reins. It's not the same as, you know, the beautiful lady with the unicorns. He looks scared as shit, frankly. And I would be too if I had two water buffaloes taking me away somewhere and I weighed, you know, less than, 6 ounces. He does have a wand, so I'm going to give him credit for that. They did bring that wand in from the magician, so kudos for that. These wide-eyed water buffalo look like they're not exactly sure where they're going either. But again, just like with the Joie de Vivre Tarot, very clever way to represent water along with the beast without actually showing water. Water buffaloes, seahorses. I like what you guys are doing. You're thinking. Alright. Steampunk Gods of the Machine. This one's way out there. A lot of them are. In fact, one thing I do like about this card is they call it Triumph, though. Not the Chariot. Triumph. So if you look, we have a tour bus over here full of fans, and here in this little pod that is being, carried along by two sets of wires, we have like astronauts or something in that pod. My camera is not focusing to save anyone's life here, but we do have these two astronauts, like these homecoming heroes here in the middle of the little glass bubble thing, and they are, going towards this tower, which could be seen as a yoni. Just saying. And what I love about this card is the Fool. If you remember, if you go back and watch my Fool video, that's the Fool right there, y'all. He had his back to us in the beginning, and he has his back to us again. There's his feather hat, and he is actually leading or guiding this pod toward its destination. Very clever. cool way to put this card. I had to stare at it for a while. Oh, we also have confetti down here, which gives that sense of, yay, they're home! Hail, conquering hero! Sorry, I had to see that. Tarot of the Vampires is next, and that looks like this. Very, very good looking. Kind of scary, but all these cards are in this deck. There's only one beast, but it has wings! The wings are back. So we see this ferocious panther bird thing, griffin. Let's call it a panther griffin. It has an archer here in its chariot, in its vehicle. And instead of water, we see blood. In this deck, there's a lot of blood. It's a deck about vampires, so there's blood on pretty much every card. But in this card, I can transfer my, my search for that water, for that connection to the unconscious. I can connect that to the blood here. We'll use the blood. Very cool card. I like his helmet. I like his hair blowing in the wind. It's very, oh, there's the crab! There it is! I thought I'd forgotten about it. There's the crab. Okay, so we saw in the Shadowscapes Tarot, god darn this glare! God darn the glare! We see on his chest plate here, this crab. Holla! I knew I wasn't completely crazy. Just a little bit. He definitely has that sense of confidence. Now, again, I do not see all of the elements like I do see in some of the others. However, we do see, and again, it's probably going to be hard to see on my camera. There's that 69 again. That symbolism for the the yin and yang, so to speak, is represented here, which can also be connected to the yoni thought process. And here, this little smudge, from what you can see in this card, that is actually a rose. And the roses recur throughout this deck. We see a lot of roses. So that is also, kind of meaningful for this particular deck. But again, I'm not getting into the individualized symbolism because I don't have time for that. Next, we have the Wildwood Tarot. I love this representation, and it just so happened that we had two archers back to back. The vampires had an archer, and so does the Wildwood Tarot. And in fact, this is called the Archer. This shows not two beasts being controlled by the archer so much as two beasts more accompanying the archer. It's different. It kind of changes the representation a little bit, but not completely. You have more of a dominant looking dog and more of a submissive looking dog. And then you have the archer right out there in front actually leading them and, hunting their prey that the dogs likely will help him to gather or secure. Him? What am I saying? It's another chick! Yes, the archer is a chick. It's like Merida from Brave. It's just my bull. Next on the list is Steampunk Tarot. This is one of my favorites. It's in my top 5. It's definitely in one of my top 5. She does not have organic beasts. She has machines. Duh. It's steampunk. These are cool looking machines. We have a dark one and a light one. She is holding reins. But she's also got a blue umbrella. It's quite stylish. I like the contrast of the color. We have the red, we have the blue. So I'm going to let her slide on that whole rain thing. Plus, it's a girl. Again, we have another female chariot. What is going on? I did not notice how many female chariot cards I had in my collection until I started going through this. It's amazing. It's going to be hard for you to see in this video, but one thing that she does bring with her from the High Priestess, this umbrella, first of all, if you can see very closely on top, it looks like little spots in the video. Those are little tiny stars, which for me, the blue parasol umbrella thing represents that veil. Oh, God, it scared me, my dog. Represents that veil, the stars, it has a representation of the Empress, but on her little thing here, and I'm going to try to get it really, really close. Can you see right there on her forehead, right above between her two eyes? Okay, you can't see it. It looks like a little white dot. It's the triple moon symbol. You have the little moon, and then it's got the two things on the side. That's what that is. It's really hard to tell, but that's what it is. So, she brought that aspect of the High Priestess that we saw in the High Priestess card, you know, into this card. A little bit of an Empress feel. I don't get that so much as, you know, actually her face, she looks kind of like the Empress. So this is almost kind of like the Empress and the High Priestess come together and are represented here together. You know, but she also, you know, she has a rigid stance. She's a very straight stance, which is, you know, reminiscent of the Emperor. You know, she does have some of that energy there that represents other cards. She didn't get full credit, but I did give partial credit for that. Next, we have the Vertigo Tarot, and this is a new one to the series. And in this one, I think the emphasis for me here, because it is so different, it looks a lot different than most of the cards, but I totally get the feeling of victory over mortality. We see here basically an X-ray version of a horse's skull and neck spinal cord, I guess, spinal column. We have an old wheel here, but, you know, we have the hand that is alive, and it's almost like this horse is sort of reanimated in a way. It's like a zombie horse. So, yeah, take that, death. That's what I thought. Can't beat this chariot. This chariot's coming back. It looks like a copper wire that's kind of surrounding that. This Vertigo Tarot it'll mess with your brain. It's a little bit, it's a little on the dark side. But this is a cool representation as well. The main thing that I get from this card has more to do with the victory over mortality, more so than anything else. And for me personally, that's not the main message of the Chariot. The main message of the Chariot has more to do with the maturity and the, you know, rising to a higher level. So for me, I don't really get so much of that out of this card as I do, you know, just kind of the message of victory over death. So I need a little more. I need just a little bit more. Now, this next one I struggled with for a long time. I did not get it at first, and I'm pretty sure that in my review I did of this, I talked some shit about this card. But I have come to appreciate it in a different way now. I think I get the fact that she is controlling two things. This is the 1977 Alchemy England Tarot. She is holding a chain, so she's got reins. But this wicked dragon, you've got the death here, but then you have the life here. There are two aspects to this dragon that she has kind of got control of. It's more of a direct control, but at the same time, I mean, really, you can hold on to that chain all you want to. If that thing wants to eat you, it's gonna eat you. As much as you can eat something without having like a face. Maybe she would just maim her, but the point is it could take her down. We see the fact that she is controlling two aspects of the same beast, even though it's not two separate beasts. So I get it. Again, not my favorite Chariot card. I think a lot is lost on that one, but it's good. It serves a purpose. I mean, you know. Then we have the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. This one only has one horse in it. And again, because this tarot deck is so zeroed in on faces, they're all very like this, as opposed to like this. We do lose a lot of the symbolism again. This is called the Fairy Stallion, so it has a different name. It is not the Chariot. But we still, you know, for me, I still get that sense of having control. Yes, this horse has a bridle on, but it is not being controlled by reins. If you see there's no bit in its mouth. It's just a bridle. So I'm not doing a dog her for being a chicken. This little fairy is, you know, riding her stallion, and notice I said her because it looks like a girl to me. But you get that sense of the fact that these two creatures are in tune with each other. This goes back to the sheepdog thing. That's why I kind of love that Archer card from the Wildwood Tarot. I love that feeling of a connectedness to the animal that is carrying the charioteer. In this case, the rider rather than charioteer. You know, this deck is growing on me. I like this representation, even though it's completely different. They renamed it. It's not called the Chariot, so I don't have that need. You know, when I hear Chariot, I want to see something being pulled and being carried from one place to another. In this one, I get a sense of motion, but not chaos, and I definitely get a feeling of connectedness. There is a total sense of ease both in the expression on the stallion and on the fairy. So, I actually really like this one. Huh. And then, last but not least, as I say every week, Inner Realms Tarot, totally off the wall. This one, I'll just tell you right now, I don't like it. I don't like this Chariot card. I've come around to a couple of the cards in this deck. Not this one. This one, they lose me. The words on it are action, motion, focus, choice, and determination. First of all, action and motion are not necessarily part of the original Chariot cards. And yes, I know things change over time. But to me, the way that I have come to understand the Chariot card, it's not so much about motion as it is about focus. So I'm going to go with the word focus, and I'm going to go with the word choice, because obviously he is making choices. He or she, in most cases apparently she, is making choices to control a situation. However, when I hear the word action, the choice, making the choice may be the action. There doesn't necessarily need to be a separate action or actually doing something. Sometimes doing nothing is the choice. That is a form of control. I could go off on a whole tangent about choosing not to make a choice and how that affects the outcome of things. But I don't. If you jive with it, great. I don't. I see pretty circles, rainbow stuff going all over the place. I do not get a feeling of control here. I don't get that one. And that is all I have for you. That was a long video. I'm sorry, and if you hung in there with me this long, congratulations. Thank you for watching, and blessed be.